Welcome guys to episode number 5 of the Rize. In this video, I'm going to be covering everything about competing for the first time, specifically around your peak week, the tanning process, and exactly what to expect on show day. I myself as a competitor know for the first time, it can be a little bit overwhelming when you're unsure about how the peak week's going to work, you're unsure what to take on the day, when to leave for your show. So this video should give you a full insight to how the full process is going to work, or a rough guideline for how your coach is going to do the peak week process with you. So the 5 points I'm going to be covering on this video is going to be 1, the peak week process and how that's roughly going to look with your coach. Number 2, what it is you need to take for your show weekend and what rough day to leave in terms of your Airbnb, hotel to get up there and get settled. Number 3, any kind of skin preparation that you need to go through before you get your tan in. Number 4, the actual tanning process. And last but not least, the full show day and what to expect and how you can be as prepared as possible come your time to go on stage. The peak week process. Now, every single person's peak week is going to look very different. So the guidelines that your coach may give you may be different from one you've seen before or one that may have been used with someone else. So coming into your peak week, be completely open-minded, but at the same time, feel free to ask your coach what it is you're doing and also why you're doing it. I think for me, learning about the process that you're doing is just as important as going through it. So communicate with your coach on peak week and allow them to tell you why it is you're going through what you're going through to make the process more fun and also watch the changes happen off the back of the actions that you're doing in peak week. Now, what to expect? Peak week is a time where you're trying to be as stress-free as possible to basically bring out any finer details of your physique. So the typical things you can look for within a peak week is going to be manipulations to your water, whether that's up or down, manipulations to sodium, again, whether that's up or down, changes to your meals. And again, in peak week, this can literally happen daily. So you'll likely be checking in with your coach daily at that point. You'll then be getting over your instructions in terms of your food, your meals, and potentially, as you get closer, daily check-ins. So expect to be checking in, expect to be having your meals changed on a daily basis. So communicating with your coach, getting all your food in ready to go. So if there are changes, you can action them straight away. You don't need to keep going out and buying more food, basically. Other things you can expect with peak week is going to be supplement changes. So if you're an assisted athlete, this is where lipolytics are maybe going to come out or other kind of supplements are going to be introduced to, again, help bring out them finer details. So check in prior to peak week with your coach to make sure you've got everything on hand is, again, going to make the week more stress-free and just make sure you've got everything on hand ready to go. Other things to mention, potential massages. So you may look to get a drainage massage booked close to the show. Again, depending on kind of what category you're doing or if your coach wants you to go down that route, that's something to consider. And as I said earlier, check-ins. One thing that's so important on peak week is having a consistent setup for your check-ins. So potentially having a tripod literally in the same space every day. So then pictures or videos can be as consistent as possible throughout that full week. For the guys, haircuts, anything like that you need, probably 2 to 3 days before your show is going to be a good time to get that done. Just so, again, you don't get any kind of like shaving marks or anything like that before you go on stage. For girls, nails, anything like that you want done prior to show day that isn't hair and makeup, get that sorted at least 3-4 days before. So again, it's nothing that you've got to do close to the show when you're going to be getting your tans, etc. Last but not least, any sweeteners or anything like that may be removed in your peak week. So things like sugar-free syrups, any kind of flavor drops, or even monsters that you're having in your diet may come out during the peak week just to stop any potential risk of water retention that could interfere with your peak week and that full drying out process. Again, the idea of peak week, guys, is to bring out the best in your physique. So you need to be as on it as you can with these changes and actioning what your coach tells you to make sure that, again, you can bring out the best in your physique. And if there's anything you're unsure about, ask your coach, communicate with them, as they're likely doing what they're doing for a reason. So you being on board with that and knowing why you're making that change is also going to help you lean into that process and make the week even more fun than it already is. The next thing that you might want to get for peak week is going to be like a little notebook. One thing that I like to track with my clients in peak week is a load of information and data. The more accountable we can be to variables that we can control is going to make sure that we can replicate that peak week if you're doing more shows, or at the same time, if you just want to gather information about how your body's functioning efficiently through that peak week. Because when we think about what the goal of a peak week is to bring the best out in your physique. And the more we can track, the more information we can gather, the more we can then make that peak week absolutely perfect. So one thing I get a lot of my athletes to do is get themselves a notepad and track everything from how well that meal digested to potentially how many toilet breaks they've had that day, just so we can be on it with the variables that we're tracking. Because as a first timer, you're not necessarily going to know the importance of how many times you go to the toilet is to the coach's information and feedback they're going to be giving you. So tracking these variables is super important. And for you to bring your best physique on stage, giving your coach as much information if they don't already ask you for it is super important to making sure that peak week goes smooth. As I said, the idea of that peak is to bring out the best in your physique. So the more on it and prepared you can be, the more that physique's going to come to life across that whole week. So what it is you need to take to your show, and also when you need to leave. I've put together a list of everything that guys need to take and everything that girls need to take so you can be prepared and ready come that week. Because I personally know how stressful it can be thinking, have you got this? Have you got that? As you want to make sure you've got everything there so you're stress-free and you've literally got everything you need for the show. So I'll pop the list on the screen now and you can pause this video, have a full read through. And if also anybody wants a copy of this guide, drop me a message on Instagram. I'll put the handle up there now and I'll send it over to you free as part of this video. So I always recommend taking 2 bags to your show. One bigger bag where you can carry literally all of the smaller bits, and then like a small kind of carry bag to actually take on show day. Because realistically, for the actual show, you're probably going to need your pre-workout pump, your resistance bands or your dumbbells, your trunks or bikini for the girls, and that is going to be what you kind of need for that show day. You don't want to be carrying around too much. You want to be literally as light as you can on your feet if you're on your own as well. So taking 2 bags is essential to making sure that you can have one that's got everything in, and then the second one you can literally just take backstage into the show with you. What time you should leave for the show? This one's going to vary depending on like how far or close the show is to you. If it's over, let's say 2 hours, I always think getting there the day before the show is ideal. Again, the last thing you want to be doing is stressing, running around on the show day, trying to get everything sorted. So being as stress-free as you can is going to complement your physique and also just make the weekend more enjoyable. So getting there the day before, having everything set from your meals there, all your bags unpacked, as again, just being relaxed in that environment is also going to help you sleep that same night and again, just be prepared come that show day. So ideally, let's say the show's on a Sunday, arriving Saturday, midday, early afternoon to get unpacked, food shopping if you need anything else, as your base coat's usually going to be the day before anyway. So getting there to get unpacked is going to mean come show day, you're all set and everything's all ready to go. Okay, so skin prep and pre-tanning procedures. So one thing that you want to do is trial out what works best for you in terms of your skin type when it comes to shaving, hair removal, as presentation of your physique, not just through how you look, but actually how your skin is prepared is also so important for competing. And it's often these small little overlooked things that do make a difference on the day. So I always recommend my girls and guys trialing different moisturizers and also different kind of exfoliating methods at least 3 weeks before, so you can kind of see what works best for you. And what I'll do again is I'll pop on the screen a few different kind of ones that are specifically good for bodybuilding and also kind of just pre-tanning products to use, as again, the tans that we use as bodybuilders are usually all very similar. So these products are often the best. And when it comes to actually shaving, again, test out what works for you. The last thing you want is cuts, bumps before you're about to go out on stage. So testing these methods is super important to making sure that you can not only present a good physique for all the dieting that you've done, but also to allow yourself to place as high as possible alongside that. The tanning process. So depending on if you're actually going through the federation that you're competing with, I personally always recommend that just because I think it keeps it all in one place. The emails that you get are usually then in a sequence and it just makes everything run a little bit smoother as part of that whole federation experience. Now, with most tanning, you'll always get an email usually around a week before. So what they'll do is they'll get all the entries, they'll then kind of close entries off, and then they'll be able to gauge how many competitors are there for each kind of time slot. So you get an email usually around a week before competing, which will give you an idea on the location for the tanning and also your time slot. And this is where checking your emails on peak week, things like that is so important, just so you don't miss any details when it comes to either tanning, registration, or the time that you're on stage. So booking in your tanning slot is super important. I always try and get my guys and girls to go as early as possible. Sometimes the tans can run over, so the last thing you want to be doing the night before your show is getting your tan done 9, 10 o'clock at night, then having to either push your meals back or at the same time going to bed hungry where you've eaten, let's say 2, 3 hours before tanning. You also want to leave time for the tan to dry off. So again, getting it done too late is going to mean you're potentially going to bed with a tan that hasn't set. So it is important that you try and get as early a slot as you can if the tan's been done the day before. Now again, this does vary depending on the federation. So some federations will do it in the morning for that full show, or others will do it the night before and then kind of like a top-up one on the day. So again, depending on who you're competing with, look into the specifics, usually on their website or through emails that they send you, and just get yourself fully familiar with that tanning process. Now, when it comes to that, there's a few things that you want to take that I did actually put in the list before as well, that's important to make sure that the tan not only sits okay, but at the same time you don't get any bills from Airbnbs because you stain the mattress or stain the sheets. So always buying a cheap disposable bed sheet put on top is just going to be an easy way to stop any kind of hotels or Airbnbs causing any problems after you've had your tan done. And last point with a tan is make sure you and your coach are happy with it. You're paying for a tanning service and you want to make sure that the tan isn't rushed and it's done in a way which complements your physique the best. So check this with your coach. Also do some check-ins if you can potentially after the tanning, just to see how it's sat and if you feel like you potentially need a little bit more the next day to again present your physique best on stage. The actual show day. This one's going to vary differently again for guys and girls. As girls, you'll have your hair, your makeup done in the morning, usually before your top coat. Now, sometimes it can be done after. It doesn't really matter which way round, but just make sure that if you go for a top-up coat in the morning, you make the girls aware that you don't want it to come anywhere close to your makeup, basically. For guys, you should be sorted at that point, so you literally just need your top-up coat. And again, this is where, like I say, checking emails is so important, as the locations for the tanning and the top-up coats can often be at a different location to the venue. So you want to make sure that you've got the time that you're on stage, or rough time that you're on stage, the location and time for your top-up coat, so that on the day you know exactly kind of what times you've got, so that you can be there, backstage, ready to go without any kind of stress. And as I said earlier on in the video, you want to have 2 bags, one to take with you backstage and one to kind of take or have someone carry for you for the actual show day after you're all checked out. Now, again, most federations usually run to the same rules when it comes to show schedules and who goes on first. Typically, it's guys on in the morning, girls on in the afternoon / early evening sometimes. And it usually always runs in the same fashion of juniors first, then kind of goes through to disability, bodybuilding, and then kind of other physique federations like that, then girls on in the afternoon. So if you're on in the morning, make sure again you're getting up early to make sure everything's sorted, meals are prepped, ready to go, and you've also got time to check in between meals. Again, the last thing you want to be doing is stressing on show day. So getting up early, knowing a rough time that you're on is super important so that you can be backstage, ready to go and pump up on your terms. Speaking of pumping up, this is one where I think it's so important to make sure that you have enough time to pump up. You're not always going to be told pump up at this exact time. So either communicating with someone like your coach in the audience or someone that's coming to watch you to get a rough gauge on how the show's running is important, or just keeping an eye on how it's running backstage so you can see what categories are going out and also making sure you don't miss anything in terms of timings. With pumping up, I always advise give yourself around 30 minutes. I think you'll often hear things about pumping up for 5-10 minutes. And the way that I always like to explain it to my athletes is, think about when you're in the gym. You'll often train for around an hour and a half to 2 hours potentially, and you've still got to pump after that session. So always pump up early. I think that's the best way to do it, rather than trying to pump up late and then feeling like you're going out not as full as you could be. So give yourself enough time to pump up. What I also say is start slow. So you can always start pumping slow. And then if you hear that it's getting close to your category, that's when you can get a little bit more aggressive with the pumps and go from there. Now, last thing on show day is communication with your coach. And especially for any first timers watching this, you can never give your coach too much information. Letting them know if you feel a little bit dehydrated on the day. Again, letting them know how many times you've been to the toilet. All little things like this may not seem important. It's all good information to give to your coach so they can then give you the perfect show day experience from a physique standpoint, and also keep your head at level. On show day, you're often going to be not sure what to expect, potentially a little bit worried, a little bit nervous. So again, communicating with them so they can put your mind at ease and allow you to perform the best out on stage is ultimately what's going to bring or make your show day experience the best. So when it comes to timings for show days, one thing to be aware of is that the times that are set are just guidelines. So if a category is on later than it said it was or later than is expected, this isn't anything to stress or worry about. As long as you're communicating with the people that are running the show backstage, as there'll always be someone there that's calling competitors up, getting categories ready to go. As long as you speak to them and can confirm that everything's running fine, it's nothing to worry about. Likely, shows are busier than expected, so they always put rough times for categories and things. But if it's running behind, it's nothing to stress about. Just communicate with the people there and go from there. And last point to the show day bit, guys, is remember to enjoy your stage time. You've gone through this full process to ultimately stand on stage for a matter of minutes. And it's so important that when you're backstage, you're feeling nervous, you're not sure what to expect. Remember to just bring yourself down and get ready to enjoy the experience. As I say, you're physically in the best condition you've ever been in. You've worked your arse off to get to that point. So make sure that just before you're about to go on stage, no matter how high and low the emotions may be, go out there and have fun. You've done that full prep, you've worked your ass up, like I said. So go out there, have some fun, and enjoy what it is you're doing on stage. So a little section to finish on, guys, is going to be about post-show, or let's say post-stage. So depending on how it goes, the first thing you want to do is get rehydrated. As I said at the start, throughout your peak week, you've most likely gone through some form of water manipulation to drive, as we say, natural diuresis. So you want to make sure that you're able to rehydrate instantly. And if you want to go that extra bit further, supplements like rehydration powder, Hydromax or Hydroflow are really good electrolyte powders to rebalance things after you've kind of gone through that water manipulation. So straight after post-show, just check with your coach that you're not doing anything that could change in terms of overalls, things like that. Rehydrate, get yourself back to where you was normally before you started that peak week, and then go from there. And second bit to add on with that is no matter how hungry you are post-show, no matter everything that you want to eat, try and eat what you actually fancy. I think it's so easy as a first timer to want everything and anything after going through that experience. But sometimes just taking a minute to actually think, what do I actually fancy? And do I want to finish this? Or am I just eating for the sake of it? Is also a good point to remember for your first show, as you'll often pay the price the next day with 12 pounds of weight gain if you just eat anything and everything for the sake of it. So I hope that video makes sense, guys. As I say, I've got a full show day guide there that I can send over after this video. So if anybody's interested in that, drop me a message on Instagram and I'll send that over. Any other questions regarding peak week, tanning, show day, drop in the comment section below and I'll come back to you there. Thanks for watching, guys.